God called us last month to come out of our shrouds. He said, get rid of them. Come out. If you want to. You get to choose, of course, do you want to come out of your shroud. Well, last month we talked about suicide. So for me, it was coming out of the shroud of death. And so I think God spoke to me there and was talking to me specifically about that, because a shroud I considered as applied to death, but then he gave us so much more understanding about what a shroud is. But there was definitely a difference when I came out of my shroud, and then there was more, and I saw more today, that I needed to step out of. So, anybody comments about that?
Well, my comment is, when God tells us something, we don't have to fully understand it. If He's saying, come out and, remove these death shrouds, oh, okay, and I didn't have, when I did it last month, I just said, I'm removing the death shrouds. I didn't know what it was covering. I didn't know what it was, but that's okay. God said it, it's there, so I removed it. And I saw myself remove it, and we saw that with other people. And then, boy, this month, and I saw what happened with that, and it was huge.
Right.
Huge, what was underneath there, and for for you, it was a suicide. For me, it was really the whole system of being under still in manipulation and control, and the more of that. God free me from that. And that's what I was asking Him to do. So I just want to say that is that you can hear this, but ice maker. You can hear this, but. You don't have to even know.
Exactly.
I think that trips people up sometimes.
Yeah.
With parts and everything, or I don't really know. Well, you don't have to, because God said it, so you're just responding to God as best you can and just saying, I'm taking it off.
Well, and when you say, because I felt this last month, when you're speaking out, God says, okay, remove your shrouds, your death shroud. Okay, well, I don't have any of those.
Right.
I'm not connected to suicide. I'm not connected to death in any way, but God specifically said any shroud, not just those associated with death.
Well, and the way I took it was that a death shroud doesn't have to do with actual dying. It can be like parts of you that feel like they're dead, or like they're dead to you, because you're like, I'm not paying attention to. They're in your unconscious. You don't even know about it, so it's a dead thing. Let's cover it up. Well, we're still alive. They're still alive in there. But you covered it up because you needed to survive. So
right. Okay, so death shroud. What do you think of when you think of a death shroud? I know we've talked about this, but so that people that are watching this can hear other people's thoughts about what is a shroud, what does it mean to be shrouded in death, after death? Anybody's thoughts?
A covering, a blanket.
Blanket sounds nice. A shroud doesn't sound so nice.
I think about Jesus. That's the time you think about it in Scripture. When He was covered away, and then they were laying there, shroud of Turin.
Right. Sometimes referred to as death clothing. The clothing, the garments that are put on afterwards. And what did they do to preserve the body in days before, formaldehyde and those type of things? What did they do?
They put oils and spices and things on them, and then covered it with the shroud to kind of keep it all in.
Right.
And we were talking about earlier, so it's to preserve the body, maybe do whatever needs to be done to help this stench stay down or something, but it also prevents the living from having to look at this decaying corpse of somebody they cared about and loved. That would be awful. So cover it up.
Right. If you think back at the days, even like in Egypt with the mummies, where they wrapped, the person really wrapped them so you couldn't see any part of that body, right?
Right. So it's definitely to cover a dead thing.
Yes.
And so when we find them in us, we're like, let's take them off, because we're not dead.
Okay. So definition of a shroud. It usually refers to an item such as cloth that covers or protects some other object. Okay, and what we're talking about is that it covers the body. Well, we're finding that it also covers parts of us. So parts can be covered in shrouds. The term's most often used in reference to burial sheets, something called a mound shroud, grave clothes, winding clothes, or winding sheets. And that would be like a mummy, winding around and around to keep the body covered. Okay. Okay, shrouds are a covering. And another definition, a length of cloth or an enveloping garment in which a dead person is wrapped for burial. The hospital, what we used was plastic, so it was not cloth at all. It was a sheet, and you had to roll the patient in the sheet, and then we usually used tape or something to keep it from coming apart.
Did they stick it in a bag then? or how?
No, no bags, no body bags,
Okay.
not in the hospital, just shrouded. Were you thinking about Dad?
No.
Okay. Okay, a shroud can also mean a thing that envelops or obscures something. So that's definitely a covering, shroud. Okay, synonyms could be covering, cover, cloak, a mantle, blanket, like Dee said, layer, cloud, or a veil. Okay, the last definition I'm going to use here is to cover or envelop so as to conceal from view. So that's what we were talking about, as covering up something.
There's two things I'm thinking about when you all have said this before, and now I'm finally connected into it. When I'm starting to walk around feeling like I'm not present, but I'm here, like I'm walking around at a level that a part is about to be there. That's kind of like being dead in your own
Mm-hmm.
natural space.
Right.
That's
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
okay, go
Mhm.
here. And then another thing, completely unrelated but sort of related, is that God recently, about a month ago, kept giving me, I just had these dreams and I know they were profound. They weren't a dream about, like it wasn't something I
Right.
ate or saw on television or whatever, because I don't watch these kinds of shows. It was just huge piles of dead corpses and bodies that I kept thinking about, but I was just walking around like, oh, there, look. And then just kept in the dream, just going around like, hold on. And when I woke up, it's like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Like piles of dead bodies. Anybody
Right.
alarmed? Like I was not alarmed. So it's almost like taking off,
Yes.
this is real.
Yes.
Let's look here. What is this? What are
Right.
these? Why are they here?
Right.
Right, that's good, yeah.
Well, don't you think sometimes that God starts doing this in your life and you don't even realize it? You don't recognize it as a death shroud?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel that something definitely started happening when I got to the point where I could open up and start talking about things, the bad things that happened to me,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, that it made a big difference in my life because I started getting stronger and stronger and stronger to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that I want to bring this up too, is sometimes when God shows you something, pay attention to the picture that He's given you. So, like what you were talking about, when I first saw them, okay, look over here, a marker. You know, if you think of a corpse or a body, you know, in a shroud, I think you kind of just see sort of wrapped up. It could be like that, not really having any shape to it. That could be a shroud. Another, maybe like this, you know, wrapped up. Kind of like that. You could tell that's a person, right? Well, I had parts of me that looked like this. Well, I say shrouds of me because I didn't know what was underneath, okay? But then, most recently, after I came out of those, I'm seeing like parts of me like that are shrouds of me. Sort of like the cloak, because that was one, it's sort of like the Grim Reaper, you know, it's kind of like can't even see a face, you know, it's kind of like that. Okay, so these to me were more of my shrouds of death,
Right.
where I felt like whatever was in there was dying or dead. Here, I'm the walking dead.
Right.
Okay, so there's a difference. That's why I said pay attention to how you see yourself when God shows you a shroud of yourself. And this is what I see in myself today. I was seeing more Walking Dead, so I wanted to get rid of those.
That's interesting. I never knew. I'm glad you drew the pictures because I never knew that you saw those other two. Because I saw one more like the top, but it didn't look scary. It didn't look as dark as the Green Ripper. Reaper. Yeah, he rips things. He's going to rip. But the green it didn't look as bad as the Grim Reaper.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. And but mine were just, I never paid attention to it. Now you're saying paying attention. They were just like more like a light gray that looked like a cloak. It went over my head, but didn't have that horrible look. But
See,
just
even the color.
it was just
You're
yeah,
saying gray.
they're like
Mine
light
were
gray.
black.
Yeah, that's what
Completely
yeah.
black. Yes.
Yeah, which means more to me about the death and suicide and stuff. But mine were this gray, stupid. Like, why is this here? It's like this dingy gray filter thing that's, you know. And then yours were bright satin white,
Yeah, and they
beautiful.
were white, beautiful, and
Kind of flowy and like
Like nothing's wrong.
Like kind of like that you can see through.
Right, and that, like
did
nothing's
anybody
wrong.
else experience anything different when they saw their shrouds? Any shape, color? Do you see any?
I didn't see it.
I don't know that if I actually saw a body shroud, and a lot of times I would think of myself as, all my life it was like I had the cloth wrapped around my head, like
Like a turban?
a cover, no,
All the
cover
way
my
around?
whole mouth and everything.
So just your
Does
head,
that
not
make
the rest
sense?
of you? So your head was shrouded.
So, yeah, it was like,
See, that's significant.
it's like my mouth, because my voice was taken away from me. I feel like my hearing, so much of it has been taken away from me.
Okay, well, that's important.
That's
So
important.
that's, see, that's key. So God says a shroud, but everybody has different looking shrouds and different. And I'm not saying that all mine are gonna look like this. Maybe they'll look different. Maybe mine will look like Deanne's. Maybe I'll have some that are flowy and white.
It probably stems from VBS. Like when I was little, my mom always made me be, you know, I was like a teenager and she made me act it out like we were doing Lazarus. So she'd wrap me up with like toilet paper the whole time she was telling the story. Then she's like, Lazarus.
So you were in white.
You were in white toilet paper.
Yeah,
White
Yeah, soft things, right?
Yeah.
Cute teacher.
Yeah, that's
Little
good.
comic relief.
Okay, so as soon as we took off our shrouds last month, I know mine was key. I know yours was Karen. I think Dee, she went through some, and I know Mom's been going through some stuff too. So definitely a change, big change, significant change.
Yes.